Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pada kesempatan kali ini, saya akan membahas the characteristics of language atau karakteristik dari bahasa. Nah, bicara tentang karakteristik bahasa atau khususnya bahasa yang digunakan oleh manusia, tentu ada di antaranya yang mana hanya manusia yang memiliki karakteristik itu dan binatang tidak. Nah, bicara masalah perbedaan antara karakteristik manusia dan hewan, tentu kita perlu meneliti bagaimana karakteristik bahasa hewan untuk mengetahui bagaimana karakteristik bahasa manusia dan untuk mengetahui perbandingan di antara keduanya. Sama halnya seperti ketika mahasiswa kedokteran ingin lebih tahu bagaimana atau apa saja organ yang dimiliki oleh manusia dan sejauh apa itu berbeda dengan hewan, maka mereka melakukan pembedahan terhadap hewan-hewan seperti tikus atau kelinci. Nah, maka dari itu dengan proses pembedahan hewan-hewan tersebut, para dokter tersebut bisa tahu organ tersebut berbeda dengan manusia dan ukurannya seperti apa, lalu yang dimiliki oleh hewan tapi tidak dimiliki oleh manusia apa, begitupun sebaliknya. Nah, ini kasusnya sama seperti dalam mempelajari karakteristik bahasa untuk mengetahui bagaimana mekanisme yang fundamental dari communication system atau dari characteristic of language dari manusia dan hewan, maka kita perlu melakukan pembelajaran atau analisis terhadap characteristic of language yang dimiliki oleh hewan. Sebelum berbicara lebih lanjut, kita akan bahas mundur terlebih dahulu, yaitu tentang pengertian bahasa. Sederhananya, bahasa adalah sebuah jalan atau sebuah cara atau sebuah medium yang dilakukan untuk membagikan informasi atau sharing information. Nah, a lot of species sharing information. Jadi banyak spesies lain yang berbagi informasi, tidak hanya manusia, bahkan binatang pun berbagi informasi. Nah, tapi sharing information it's not enough buat membuat suatu hal dikatakan sebagai sebuah bahasa. Nah, maka dari itu ada yang namanya modes of communication. Itu menunjukkan apa saja yang termasuk ke dalam sebuah bahasa yang mana bisa menyebabkan atau menimbulkan terjadinya sebuah komunikasi. Nah, ada three primary way dari modes of communication. Ada tiga macam. Yang pertama ada vocal auditory, yang kedua ada gestural visual, dan yang ketiga ada chemical olfactory. Nah, nanti akan saya bahas satu persatu. Akan saya lengkapi juga dengan beberapa tayangan video yang akan membantu teman-teman dalam memahami ketiga modes of communication ini. Oke, yang pertama ada vocal auditory atau pendengaran vokal. Nah, ini pertama kali diusulkan oleh Charles F. Hackett dalam mengkarakterisasi bahasa manusia dan membedakannya dari komunikasi hewan. Ini menggambarkan cara sinyal vokal dapat digunakan untuk menghasilkan bahasa. Pembicara menggunakan saluran vokal yang berisi sebagian besar organ bicara untuk menghasilkan suara bicara, dan pendengar menggunakan alat pendengaran untuk menerima dan memproses suara bicara. Inilah sebabnya mengapa bahasa manusia dikatakan atau didasarkan pada suara ucapan yang dihasilkan oleh sistem artikulasi dan diterima melalui sistem pendengaran. Jadi saluran vokal adalah sarana yang sangat baik di mana bunyi-bunyi bicara dapat disertai atau diganti dengan gerakan, ekspresi wajah, gerakan tubuh, dan cara berpakaian. Namun, Hackett menganggap fitur desain ini secara fundamental menguntungkan bagi primata karena itu membuat sebagian besar tubuh bebas untuk aktivitas lain yang dapat dilakukan pada saat yang sama. Yang selanjutnya ada visual gesture. Nah, jadi bahasa tidak dibatasi dalam bahasa vokal. Komunikasi visual gestural juga termasuk ke dalam komunikasi non-bahasa yang ditujukan untuk mempelajari gerakan universal, ekspresi wajah, bahasa tubuh, dan pantomim. Pembaca mengembangkan keterampilan dan kepercayaan diri untuk berinteraksi tanpa bahasa bersama dengan individu seperti seseorang yang tuli atau sulit mendengar, atau mungkin berbicara dengan orang lain yang menggunakan bahasa asing yang mana kita tidak mengerti. Nah, teks dan sumber daya daring yang menyertainya menampilkan banyak hal yang memecahkan permasalahan dalam komunikasi jenis ini. Nah, jadi komunikasi visual gestural ini adalah sumber yang luar biasa yang mana menghilangkan batasan-batasan antara manusia yang memiliki organ yang sempurna untuk berkomunikasi dengan mereka yang tidak memiliki itu. Yang selanjutnya ada chemical olfactory. Nah, ini merupakan mode komunikasi tertua. Jadi, ini adalah salah satu bentuk yang paling sedikit difahami karena banyaknya chemical things yang ada di lingkungan ini sehingga sulit diprediksi. Nah, kemampuan untuk mendeteksi chemical ini banyak dimiliki oleh hewan. Nah, inilah salah satu cara yang dilakukan oleh hewan dalam berkomunikasi. Misal, seekor anjing yang penciumannya sangat tajam sehingga dia bisa mencium bau dari pemiliknya dari jarak yang sangat jauh, atau dia bisa mencium bau dari tubuh temannya yang berada sangat jauh. Nah, ini adalah salah satu bentuk komunikasi juga, atau salah satu modes of communication. Nah, ini ada contoh lain, misal spesies ikan kecil berhasil menghindari habitat dengan konsentrasi isyarat kimia ini. Nah, jadi ikan bisa menghindari musuhnya karena penciumannya yang sangat tajam. Jadi dari jarak yang sangat jauh dia sudah tahu bahwa akan ada predator yang akan memangsanya. Nah, jadi penandaan aroma atau tadi chemical olfactory ini adalah bentuk umum dari komunikasi penciuman pada mamalia.
Morning, Kelly. The tulips look great. Have you ever wondered how your dog experiences the world? Here's what she sees. Not terribly interesting. But what she smells, that's a totally different story. And it begins at her wonderfully developed nose. As your dog catches the first hints of fresh air, her nose's moist, spongy outside helps capture any scents the breeze carries. The ability to smell separately, with each nostril, smelling in stereo, helps to determine the direction of the smell's source, so that within the first few moments of sniffing, the dog starts to become aware of not just what kinds of things are out there, but also where they're located. As air enters the nose, a small fold of tissue divides it into two separate folds, one for breathing and one just for smelling. This second airflow enters a region filled with highly specialized olfactory receptor cells, several hundred millions of them, compared to our 5 million. And unlike our clumsy way of breathing in and out through the same passage, dogs exhale through slits at the side of their nose, creating swirls of air that help draw in new odor molecules and allow odor concentration to build up over multiple sniffs. But all that impressive nasal architecture wouldn't be much help without something to process the loads of information the nose scoops up. And it turns out that the olfactory system, dedicated to processing smells, takes up many times more relative brain area in dogs than in humans. All of this allows dogs to distinguish and remember a staggering variety of specific scents at concentrations up to 100 million times less than what our noses can detect. If you can smell a spritz of perfume in a small room, a dog would have no trouble smelling it in an enclosed stadium and distinguishing its ingredients to boot. And everything in the street, every passing person or car, any contents of the neighbor's trash, each type of tree, and all the birds and insects in it, has a distinct odor profile telling your dog what it is, where it is, and which direction it's moving in. Besides being much more powerful than ours, a dog's sense of smell can pick up things that can't even be seen at all. A whole separate olfactory system, called the vomeral nasal organ, above the roof of the mouth, detects the hormones all animals, including humans, naturally release. It lets dogs identify potential mates or distinguish between friendly and hostile animals. It alerts them to our various emotional states, and it can even tell them when someone is pregnant or sick. Because olfaction is more primal than other senses, bypassing the thalamus to connect directly to the brain structures involving emotion and instinct, we might even say a dog's perception is more immediate and visceral than ours. But the most amazing thing about your dog's nose is that it can traverse time. The past appears in tracks left by passers-by and by the warmth of a recently parked car, or the residue of where you've been and what you've done recently. Landmarks like fire hydrants and trees are aromatic bulletin boards carrying messages of who's been by, what they've been eating, and how they're feeling. And the future is in the breeze, alerting them to something or someone approaching long before you see them. Where we see and hear something at a single moment, a dog smells an entire story, from start to finish. In some of the best examples of canine-human collaboration, dogs help us by sharing and reacting to those stories. They can respond with kindness to people in distress or with aggression to threats, because stress and anger manifest as a cloud of hormones recognizable to the dog's nose. With the proper training, they can even alert us to invisible threats ranging from bombs to cancer. As it turns out, humanity's best friend is not one who experiences the same things we do, but one whose incredible nose reveals a whole other world beyond our eyes.
Selain itu, bahasa juga memiliki beberapa hal lain seperti pragmatic function, semanticity, arbitrariness, discreteness, displacement. Nah, hal-hal tersebut adalah fitur-fitur yang termasuk ke dalam bahasa dan sistem dalam berkomunikasi. Akan saya jelaskan satu persatu apa itu pragmatic function, semanticity, arbitrariness, discreteness, dan displacement.
The first design feature we'll talk about is arbitrariness. This is the idea that a form in language bears no resemblance to the thing it represents. For example, consider the word cat, written here in English and through the International Phonetic Alphabet, which we'll get to in a moment. There's nothing inherently cat-like about the word cat. It is merely through convention that we use this word to represent the furry critter with 4 legs, a tail, and whiskers. If you think about it, the form cat has as much to do with an actual cat as cows do, but of course we don't call cats cows and vice versa. So then, the relationship between the form and the referent is completely random. It's arbitrary. It's best to think of arbitrariness not as a binary category, but as a continuum. On one end, you have forms that are more arbitrary, like the word cat. On the other end, you have what are called iconic forms, or forms that do bear some resemblance to the thing they represent. You can find examples of iconicity in spoken language, but let's take an example from signed language. So here, I'll ask you to pause this video and see if you can figure out what the man is trying to sign in American Sign Language. Any guesses? If you said tree, you're right. Now, even if you didn't, it's not hard to see that that sign does look a lot like a tree. After all, the forearm represents the trunk and the fingers are the branches. In fact, even though you can't see it here, when this sign is used in real life, the signer moves the hand in a twisting motion as if to depict the wind moving through the branches. Now that's a lot more tree-like than the word tree. It's important to note that sign languages use a lot of arbitrariness too. It's not like they're built entirely on iconicity. So what about the middle of the continuum? Well, it's useful to think of this as the domain of onomatopoeia. That's where you use a word to name something based on the sound it makes. Think about the sound a rooster makes in the morning. Cock-a-doodle-doo. On the one hand, this form is iconic. After all, cock-a-doodle-doo does kind of resemble the sound a rooster makes, but on the other hand, it also has some arbitrariness because it relies on the use of permissible sounds in English. That's why these onomatopoeic forms differ across languages. In English, we say cock-a-doodle-doo, but in French, it's more like cocorico, and in Spanish, it's more like kikiriki. Other examples include boom, sizzle, and splash. The next design feature is discreteness. This is the idea that language is composed of individual sounds, and each of these sounds by themselves are meaningless. Let's come back to our friend cat. This word has 3 sounds, k, a, t. You can think of each of these sounds as atomic units, building blocks that can be combined and recombined in different ways to yield different meanings. Every language has a limited number of consonant and vowel sounds, but from these very humble beginnings we can construct words, phrases, sentences, discourse, and entire worlds of thought. This leads us to our next design feature, productivity. Productivity is the idea that language users can create and understand novel utterances. Human language is not a closed system, at least some parts of it. People can and do create new words that become a part of the lexicon. Aspirin, Teflon, Vaseline, Kleenex, Xerox, zipper, nylon, and yes, even twerk. These are all relatively new additions to the English language. Take one notable example, Back in the 1930s, the mathematician Edward Kastner was talking with one of his nephews, seeking a term for a relatively large number. Actually, it's really large. It's 1 followed by 100 zeros. The nephew suggested the term Google. It's a heck of a lot easier to say than 10 duotrigintillion. Now fast forward to 1998, when the founders of a new internet startup needed a name for their search engine, and a new era was born. So while this word began its life as a noun, both to represent the number and the company, it eventually became used as a verb as well, as in, I don't know, let me Google that for you. This idea can be taken further, though. Consider this sentence. The man on the moon gazed back at Earth and tried to spot his house. There's a good chance you've never said or heard this utterance, but you can still understand what it means. Let's take it further. The man on the moon gazed back at Earth and tried to spot his house, but he couldn't see it because he was on the moon, which is 238,000 miles away from Earth, which is too far away for even the keenest of eagles to spot. Whew. Theoretically, this sentence could go on forever. This illustrates a property of language called recursion. It's not an actual design feature, but it's a result of productivity. Recursion is the ability to embed phrases within phrases and sentences within sentences to yield an infinitely long sentence. Of course, people don't have unlimited energy, or attention spans for that matter, so we don't speak in infinitely long utterances. Otherwise, this would be a longer video. In a sense, productivity is made possible because it builds on the design features of discreteness and arbitrariness. The next design feature is duality of patterning, or double articulation. This is the idea that there are 2 layers to human language. Think of it like this. The linguistic signal is composed of individual sounds, which are meaningless in and of themselves, but the other layer is composed of the meaningful combination of these sounds, such as in words, phrases, and sentences. I've placed the green layer, the meaningful layer, on top because it's more noticeable, just like we more readily notice a field of grass than we do the soil underneath it. The next design feature is cultural transmission. This is the process whereby a language is passed down from one generation to the next. While humans may be genetically predisposed to acquire language, we're not hardwired to acquire any one language. That is, we only acquire the language or languages to which we are exposed. For example, if a child is raised in an environment in which English is spoken, that child will acquire English. If he or she is raised in an environment in which Spanish or French is spoken, the child will acquire Spanish or French. Now, suppose a child were born to English-speaking parents, but that child was adopted at a very young age into a French-speaking household. That child will speak French, not English. Again, we only acquire the language or languages we're exposed to. The next design feature is learnability, which is not to be confused with cultural transmission. Learnability is the idea that humans can learn other languages. After the critical period, which lasts roughly from birth until puberty, it becomes much harder to learn another language, but it can be done. Many do this through rigorous study and immersion in another culture. Examples of cultural transmission and learnability in the rest of the animal kingdom are scarce. Next, we have displacement, which is the ability to talk about events remote in time and space. We can talk about what we did last weekend, what we'll do next weekend. We can talk about faraway places. We can even talk about things that don't even exist. I may never take my leprechaun friend to the edge of the universe, but that doesn't prevent me from talking about it. So the next design feature is prevarication, which involves the human capacity to lie. Lying takes on many forms in human language, and people, no matter how honest they insist they are, illustrate prevarication every day. For example, when someone says, "Hey, how are you?" Even if you've had a terrible day, you might respond with, "Oh, I'm good, how are you?" We often reassure a loved one with, "It's okay, everything is fine," when in actuality things are far from it. We often exaggerate in telling stories by saying things such as, "Yeah, that fish was like 20 feet long, man," when in actuality it was just a minnow. We can also use language to willfully deceive, like that time Bill Clinton insisted that he didn't have any sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky. Yes, to a greater or lesser extent, we all use language to lie and always will. The final design feature is reflexiveness. This involves the ability to use language to talk about language itself. For example, consider the sentence, "This sentence has 5 words." But it doesn't have to be this explicit. We use phrases all the time to comment on language itself, such as strictly speaking, needless to say, and so to speak. Needless to say, this whole video and all linguistics classes are an exercise in reflexiveness, as they take language as their focus and require language to do so. So, what have we covered? Arbitrariness involves forms in a language that bear no resemblance to the things they represent. Discreteness means that language is composed of individual sounds, and these atomic units can be recombined to make other meaningful forms. Productivity builds on arbitrariness and discreteness by allowing us to create and understand novel utterances, even theoretically, infinitely long ones. Duality of patterning is the observation that language has 2 layers, one which is a collection of individual sounds which are, in and of themselves, meaningless, and one which is made from the meaningful combination of these sounds. Cultural transmission means we acquire only the languages we're exposed to, while learnability is the capacity to learn other languages. Displacement means we're not restricted to talking about the here and now. Prevarication allows us to use language to lie, and reflexiveness allows us to use language to, well, talk about language. Okay, that's all